3, 2, 1, fire.
In 1988, the Iran-Iraq War turned the Persian Gulf into a deadly battlefield. No ship was safe, not even those of the U.S. Navy.
Drop it now!
The USS Samuel B Roberts was nearly torn apart by a mysterious mine, sparking a desperate search by U.S. Navy divers. They found the mine's serial numbers matched those from an Iranian ship seized by Navy SEALs. Angered, the United States launched Operation Praying Mantis to put Iran in its place.
Prepare to engage.
Join us as we unravel the shocking secret behind the Iranian vessel's unexpected attack against an insanely armored U.S. warship. The powder keg. In 1979, Iran saw a dramatic change when its pro-American leader, the Shah, was overthrown in a violent revolution.
The Shah of Iran savors the power and the worldwide attention his oil has brought him.
This uprising led to the formation of the Islamic Republic of Iran, headed by Grand Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini.
The clergy take over and the next day reintroduce their own system of savak and kill people in the name of the Allah.
With this power shift, the strong relationship between the U.S. Navy and the Iranian Navy, which had been formed during the Cold War to counter the Soviet Union, came to a sudden end. As part of their alliance, the United States provided Iran with some of the most advanced military equipment of the time. This included F-14 Tomcat fighter jets equipped with long-range Phoenix missiles, P-3 Orion aircraft designed for hunting submarines, and Harpoon missiles to target enemy ships. Additionally, the U.S. Navy was in the process of building 4 powerful destroyers for Iran, but these were left unfinished after the revolution. These ships were often called the Ayatollah or Khomeini class, named after the new leader. In September 1980, Iraq's dictator, Saddam Hussein, saw an opportunity in the chaos that had overtaken Iran after the revolution. He launched a massive military invasion, aiming to take advantage of Iran's weakened state.
Don't get Saddam angry.
The conflict between Iraq and Iran was fueled by long-standing border disputes, desires for more territory, and deep differences in their religious and political beliefs. Both countries threw everything they had into the war, using large armies, advanced weapons, and ruthless tactics to try to gain an advantage. The war dragged on for nearly 10 years, with both sides suffering heavy losses. By 1988, the conflict had reached a point where both nations were exhausted, and ceasefire talks began.
8 years of death and pain and nothing accomplished.
The war left a trail of devastation in its wake. Trench warfare, chemical attacks, and widespread bombings caused enormous civilian casualties, forced many people to flee their homes, and reduced entire cities to ruins. Both Iran and Iraq were left deeply scarred, with massive destruction marking the end of a brutal and bitter conflict. During the Tanker War, international powers, particularly the United States, played a key role in the conflict. The U.S. and its allies, including Western countries and the Soviet Union, provided Iraq with weapons, supplies, diplomatic support, intelligence, and financial aid to help them combat Iran. The conflict soon spread to the Persian Gulf, where the Iranian Navy and Air Force, trained by the U.S., began to dominate. In retaliation, Iraq started attacking Iranian shipping in the northern part of the Gulf, leading to what became known as the Tanker War.
The most dangerous place for merchant shipping today is the Gulf, surrounded by the Gulf War.
By 1987, Iran had launched 168 attacks on merchant ships, while Iraq had carried out over 283. The Persian Gulf quickly became a battleground. Kuwait, facing threats to its tankers from Iranian attacks, sought international help to safeguard its shipping. To protect these vessels, some were allowed to fly the U.S. flag. Additionally, the U.S. Navy sent ships to the Persian Gulf as part of Operation Earnest Will. Their mission was to escort Kuwaiti oil tankers that had been reflagged, ensuring their safe passage through the Gulf amid the hostilities from both Iraqi and Iranian forces.
Absolutely, we've got it under control. U.S. Navy minesweeping force here has got it under control, no question about it.
In late 1987 and 1988, the tension between the U.S. and Iran grew stronger.
There was no question about it, no hesitancy on our part to do that, to fulfill the mission.
Iran began placing hundreds of mines in the Arabian Gulf, which caused several tankers to be hit and created a global uproar. This led to the capture of the Iran Ajr, the ship responsible for laying these mines. At the beginning of 1988, the U.S. Navy was given new, more relaxed rules to deal with attacks on neutral ships. This was meant to prevent any potential assaults from Iran or Iraq. In February 1988, the USS Samuel B Roberts, a frigate, was sent to the Gulf to help the U.S. Navy task force. Its mission was to protect tankers from Iranian warships and aircraft, and to support secret mobile bases. Crucially, it also kept the Iranian frigate Sabalan from attacking merchant ships. On April 14, 1988, while the USS Samuel B Roberts was returning from a successful escort mission, a lookout spotted 3 mines in the water. The ship stopped, and Commander Paul Rinn ordered all available sailors to the main deck. As the ship reversed, it struck an Iranian moored mine, which caused a massive explosion. The blast tore apart the ship's keel and flooded it with over 2,000 tons of water, creating a huge fireball that shot up through the ship's stack. Despite the severe damage, the crew managed to control the fire and keep the ship together. The Iranian frigate Sabalan arrived later that night, but stayed at a safe distance. The USS Samuel B Roberts barely stayed afloat and was eventually towed away. 10 crew members needed medical evacuation, but survived. This incident was a turning point for the U.S. Navy, leading them to decide it was time to retaliate and seek out and destroy the Iranian ships laying mines in the Persian Gulf. Next, let's examine how the United States responded to the attack. Operation Praying Mantis. Operation Praying Mantis was a military action by the United States on April 18, 1988, targeting Iranian naval assets in the Persian Gulf.
Just days after USS Samuel B Roberts hit the mine, President Reagan ordered U.S. forces to strike back.
They must know that we will protect our ships, and if they threaten us, they'll pay a price.
This was in response to an incident 4 days earlier when an American warship was damaged by a mine. On April 14, 1988, the USS Samuel B Roberts, a guided missile frigate, hit a mine while navigating international waters. This incident was part of Operation Earnest Will, a mission aimed at safeguarding Kuwaiti oil tankers from Iranian attacks during the Iran-Iraq War. The explosion caused significant damage to the ship, including a breach in its hull and a broken keel, but the crew managed to prevent it from sinking, and fortunately, no one lost their life. When it was discovered that the mines that damaged the Roberts had serial numbers matching those from an Iranian barge captured the previous September, U.S. officials decided to retaliate. The U.S. launched its attack on April 18, 1988, targeting Iranian positions. The operation resulted in the destruction, damage, or sinking of 2 Iranian oil platforms, 3 warships, several armed boats, and 2 fighter jets.
American warships shelled and destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms and then raided another.
The only American casualties were 2 Marine aviators who died when their helicopter crashed into the Gulf. The attack forced Iran to agree to a ceasefire with Iraq later that summer, which ended the 8-year-long Iran-Iraq War. Later, Iran took legal action against the United States, claiming that the attacks broke their 1995 Treaty of Amity. On November 6, 2003, the International Court of Justice rejected Iran's claim. However, the court did say that Operation Praying Mantis and Operation Nimble Archer from the previous October were not needed to protect the essential security interests of the United States. Operation Praying Mantis was the biggest naval battle for the U.S. Navy since World War II. It was the first time the U.S. Navy used anti-ship missiles in combat against enemy ships, and the only time a major surface warship was sunk since World War II ended. On April 18, 1988, the U.S. Navy launched an attack with several groups of surface warships, supported by aircraft from the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise and its cruiser escort, USS Truxtun. The attack began with coordinated strikes from 2 surface groups. One of these groups, called a Surface Action Group, SAG, included the destroyers USS Merrill, with its LAMPS Mk-1 helicopter detachment, HSL-35 Det-1, and USS Lind McCormick, along with the amphibious transport dock USS Trenton and its Marine Air Ground Task Force, Contingency MEG-TF 288 from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. This group, also supported by the LAMPS helicopter detachment from USS Samuel B Roberts, was tasked with destroying the guns and other military equipment on the Sasan oil platform. At 8 a.m., the commander of the SAG, who also led Destroyer Squadron 9, instructed the USS Merrill to send a warning to the people on the oil platform, telling them to leave immediately. The SAG waited for 20 minutes before starting their attack. The oil platform responded with gunfire from twin-barrel 23mm Zu-23 cannons. The SAG's guns managed to knock out some of these cannons, prompting the platform's crew to ask for a ceasefire via radio. The SAG agreed to halt the attack. Once a tugboat had taken away additional personnel from the platform, the ships began firing again at the remaining Zu-23 cannons and eventually destroyed them. AH-1 Cobra helicopters then finished off any remaining enemy resistance. Marines boarded the platform, rescued a wounded survivor, seized some small weapons, and gathered intelligence. They set explosives, left the platform, and blew it up. After that, the SAG was directed to head north to destroy the Raksh oil platform. As the SAG left the Sasan oil field, 2 Iranian F-4 jets made an attack run, but turned away when the USS Lynd McCormick targeted them with its fire control radar. The attack was later called off partway to the Raksh platform to ease tensions and show a willingness to de-escalate the situation. The other group, which included the guided missile cruiser USS Wainwright and the frigates USS Simpson and USS Bagley, launched an attack on the Siri oil platform. Navy SEALs were tasked with capturing, taking control of, and destroying the Siri platform. However, since the platform had already suffered significant damage from naval gunfire, a full assault was no longer necessary. In response, Iran sent out fast-moving Boghamar speedboats to strike various targets in the Persian Gulf. These targets included the American supply ship Willie Tide, the Panamanian oil rig Scan Bay, and the British tanker York Marine. Each of these vessels was damaged to varying extents. All these targets were part of the Mubarak offshore Saudi oil field. After these attacks, A-6E intruder aircraft from the USS Enterprise were guided to the speedboats by an American frigate. The 2 VA-95 aircraft dropped Rockeye cluster bombs on the speedboats, sinking one and damaging several others. The damaged speedboats then retreated to the Iranian-controlled island of Abu Musa. The conflict intensified further. The Iranian fast attack craft Joshan, which was a common class, similar to the La Combattante II type, challenged the USS Wainwright and Surface Action Group Charlie. The commander of the Wainwright issued a final warning, telling Joshan to stop your engines, abandon ship, I intend to sink you. Joshan responded by launching a harpoon missile at them. However, the missile was successfully diverted by chaff, a type of countermeasure. Simpson responded to the threat by launching 4 standard missiles, followed by Wainwright firing 1 standard missile. All the missiles struck the Iranian ship and damaged its upper structure, but the ship didn't sink right away. To finish the job, Bagley fired another harpoon missile, which missed the target. Meanwhile, SAG Charlie moved in closer to the damaged Iranian vessel. Simpson, followed by Bagley and Wainwright, used their guns to sink the injured ship. While this was happening, 2 Iranian F-4 Phantom fighter jets were flying about 48 kilometers away. To drive them off, Wainwright launched 2 extended-range standard missiles. One of these missiles exploded near an F-4, blowing part of its wing off and scattering shrapnel over the plane's body. The F-4s retreated, and the damaged jet was able to land safely back at Bandar Abbas. The conflict continued when the Iranian frigate Iris Sahand left Bandar Abbas and confronted a group of American ships. The frigate was spotted by 2 A-6E aircraft from VA-95, which were on patrol for USS Joseph Strauss. Sahand fired missiles at the A-6Es, but the aircraft responded with 2 harpoon missiles and 4 laser-guided Skipper missiles. Joseph Strauss also launched a harpoon missile. Most, if not all, of the missiles hit their targets, causing severe damage and fire on Sahand. The fires eventually reached the ship's ammunition storage, leading to a massive explosion that sank the frigate. Late in the day, the Iranian frigate Iris Sabalin left its dock and launched a surface-to-air missile at several A-6E aircraft from VA-95. In response, the A-6E planes dropped a Mark 82 laser-guided bomb into Sabalin's stack, severely damaging the ship and setting it on fire. The damaged frigate, with its stern partially underwater, was towed by an Iranian tug. After repairs, it was eventually put back into service. The aircraft from VA-95 followed orders and did not continue the attack. Lieutenant Commander James Engler, the pilot who inflicted the damage on Sabalin, was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross by Admiral William J. Crowe, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, for his actions against Sabalin and Iranian gunboats. In retaliation, Iran launched Silkworm missiles, believed to be the HY-4 version, from land bases targeting Sag Delta in the Strait of Hormuz and USS Gary in the northern central Persian Gulf. However, all the missiles missed due to the ship's evasive maneuvers and decoys. One missile was likely intercepted and destroyed by Gary's 76mm gun. The Pentagon and the Reagan administration later denied that any Silkworm attacks occurred, possibly to prevent further escalation, as they had previously promised that any such attacks would lead to retaliation against Iranian targets. After the attack on Sabalin, U.S. naval forces were told to step back and calm things down, giving Iran a chance to back off and avoid more fighting. Iran agreed to this, and the fighting stopped. However, both sides stayed on high alert, and there were close calls throughout the night and into the next day as the ships moved around the Gulf. 2 days after the battle, Linda McCormick was assigned to guide a U.S. refueling ship through the Strait of Hormuz, with a Scandinavian merchant ship nearby, likely for protection. Although the ship stayed alert, no signs of hostility were detected, and the conflict came to an end. By the end of the operation, U.S. Marines, Navy ships, and aircraft had taken out Iranian naval and intelligence facilities on 2 damaged oil platforms in the Persian Gulf. They also sank at least 3 Iranian speedboats, 1 Iranian frigate, and 1 fast attack missile boat. Another Iranian frigate was damaged in the fight. Sabalin was repaired in 1989, upgraded, and is still in service with the Iranian Navy today. The fires eventually burned out, but the damage forced the demolition of the Siri platforms after the war. The site was later rebuilt for oil production by French and Russian oil companies, who bought the drilling rights from the Iranian government. 2 U.S. personnel who were part of the crew for a Marine Corps AH-1TC Cobra attack helicopter were lost in an accident. The helicopter, attached to the USS Trenton, was on a reconnaissance mission when it crashed after dark, about 15 miles southwest of Abu Musa Island. The bodies of the crew members were recovered by Navy divers in May, and the wreckage was lifted from the site later that month. Navy officials reported that the helicopter showed no signs of being hit by enemy fire. However, in his book Tanker War, author Lee Allen Zatarain suggests there might have been some sign that the helicopter crashed while trying to avoid enemy fire from the island. A month later, the guided missile cruiser USS Vincennes arrived quickly to protect the frigate Samuel B Roberts, who was being transported back to the United States. On July 3, 1988, Vincennes accidentally shot down Iran Air Flight 665, a commercial airliner on a routine flight, killing all 290 people on board. The U.S. government said the Vincennes crew mistakenly identified the Iranian Airbus as an attacking F-14 fighter. In contrast, the Iranian government accused the Vincennes of deliberately targeting a civilian aircraft and demanded responsibility for the deaths. On November 6, 2003, the International Court of Justice decided a disagreement between Iran and the United States. Both countries had made claims against each other over a 1995 agreement called the Treaty of Amity. Iran wanted reparations from the U.S., and the U.S. had its counterclaim. The court decided to reject both claims. The reason was that the 1955 treaty only covered freedom of trade and navigation between the two countries. At the time of the dispute, the U.S. had a trade embargo on Iran, which meant that there was no direct trade or navigation between the two countries. Because the treaty didn't address the embargo, the court found no basis for the claims. The court decided that the U.S. actions against Iranian oil platforms on October 19, 1987, and April 18, 1988, known as Operation Nimble Archer and Operation Praying Mantis, weren't necessary to protect America's crucial security interests. Although the court agreed that these actions couldn't be justified as essential for U.S. security, it also ruled that Iran's claim wasn't valid. Iran had argued that the attacks violated the treaty's provision about free trade between the two countries. Because of this, Iran's request for compensation was also rejected. Now, let's explore the world's ocean narrow passage. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. In the dark waters of the Persian Gulf, an Iranian vessel launched a surprising attack on a heavily armored U.S. warship. The Iranian crew knew their ship wasn't made to take on such a giant, but desperation and pride pushed them on. The U.S. warship, heavily protected and packed with modern weapons, didn't even notice the small dot on its radar. As the Iranian ship got closer, the crew launched a bold, last-ditch attack. They fired a single old missile, expecting little, but luck had a surprise. Against all odds, the missile hit a weak spot, one that the engineers of today had missed. The warship shook as the explosion hit it, its armor cracking like a giant waking from a bad dream. The U.S. warship, though still in the fight, had been damaged by an old weapon used by a crew with nothing to lose. The Iranian ship disappeared into the night, leaving behind a stunned silence that echoed across the ocean. What are your thoughts on this daring Iranian attack on a U.S. warship? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. The Strait of Hormuz. In the world's oceans, there are several narrow passages, and the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most significant. This strait lies between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, and serves as the only sea route from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. It is crucial because it is one of the world's most important shipping lanes. On the northern side of the strait is Iran, while the southern side is bordered by the United Arab Emirates and Musandam, a part of Oman. At its narrowest point, the strait is just 21 nautical miles wide, which is about 39 kilometers. A significant portion of the world's energy passes through this narrow passage. Around 33% of liquefied natural gas and nearly 20% of global oil production. This makes the Strait of Hormuz a vital sea route. Due to its narrow width, it acts as a critical choke point. Smaller missile boats and fast attack vessels, which are agile and can maneuver easily in these tight waters, pose a threat to large warships and commercial ships. Iran has developed a unique military strategy to control this important strait. The country has invested in these small, agile vessels and crafted effective plans to deploy them in the strait. Iran's navy is well equipped with a fleet of these boats, ready to operate at short notice. These boats are armed with short-range rockets, anti-ship missiles, and torpedoes. Iran's naval strength and its ability to defend the Strait of Hormuz are well recognized. In a report dated September 11, 2008, the Washington Institute for Near East Policy noted that over the past 20 years, following Iraq's war on Iran, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, has greatly improved its naval skills. The IRGC is now able to carry out special types of warfare against larger naval forces. The report highlights that the IRGC Navy has become a highly motivated, well-equipped, and well-funded force, and it now has significant control over the important Strait of Hormuz, which is a major route for the world's oil supply. Tensions in the region increased after President Trump's administration decided to pull the U.S. out of the Iran nuclear deal and imposed strict sanctions on Iran. The nuclear deal had given Iran some relief from sanctions in return for limits on its nuclear activities. The Trump administration believed that Iran was misusing this agreement. In recent months, conflicts have intensified. The U.S. has accused Iran of attacking commercial ships, and Iran has shot down an American RQ-4A Global Hawk drone. In July of this year, the USS Boxer had a standoff with an Iranian drone. Pentagon spokesman Jonathan Hoffman explained that around 10 a.m. local time, while the USS Boxer was in international waters preparing to cross the Strait of Hormuz, an unmanned aerial system, UAS, approached and came close enough to be a threat. The ship took defensive measures to protect itself and its crew. Additionally, in July, Iran seized a British tanker in the Strait of Hormuz.
Iranian militants striking a British ship with a missile. That ship now on fire and in danger of sinking tonight. The Iranian-backed Houthi militants striking a British oil tanker, setting it ablaze.
And in June, 2 oil tankers were attacked in the nearby Gulf of Oman. The LAV-25, short for Light Armored Vehicle, is an 8-wheeled, amphibious reconnaissance vehicle used by the U.S. Marine Corps, the U.S. Army, and the Canadian Army. It uses a 6V53T Detroit diesel turbocharged engine and can switch between 4-wheel drive and 8-wheel drive. This vehicle can swim through water, though it can only handle calm bodies of water and not the ocean. When moving in water, it goes at a maximum speed of about 12 kilometers per hour with the help of propellers. On land, it can reach speeds of around 100 kilometers per hour, whether it's using 4-wheel or 8-wheel drive. The LAV-25 uses diesel fuel. The vehicle is armed with a 25mm M242 Bushmaster autocannon, two 7.62 mm M240 machine guns, and 2 sets of 4-barrel smoke grenade launchers mounted on the front sides of the turret. It carries a crew of 3, a vehicle commander, a gunner, and a driver, plus 4 additional passengers who serve as scouts and carry combat gear. Though it's lightly armored, the LAV-25's basic model features high-strength steel armor that ranges from 4.71 mm to 9.71 mm thick. This armor can protect against small arms fire, like the 7.62 by 39 mm rounds used in AK-47 rifles. There are different models of the LAV, such as the LAV-25, LAV-25A1, and LAV-25A2. Last year, Major General David Kaufman, who directs expeditionary warfare, mentioned that the Navy and Marine leaders were finding new and clever ways to protect ships in dangerous areas. Kaufman shared an interesting story. He saw a Marine Expeditionary Unit, MEU commander, attach an LAV to the front of a flight deck. The LAV had better sensors than the ship itself for spotting small boats. He noted that the LAV team would stay up there to help. It's worth mentioning that until now, aircraft were usually used to handle emerging threats, but the LAV is not just for the Strait of Hormuz. For instance, in September last year, the 31st MEU placed in LAV on the flight deck of the amphibious assault ship USS Wasp during a training exercise in the South China Sea.
One-day joint military exercise in the South China Sea on Sunday. A statement by the Philippines Armed Forces said the drills were held within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea.
During this drill, the LAV's M242 chain guns and the coaxial M240C machine guns were used to shoot at target dummies. The USS Boxer has also seen land vehicles on its deck before. It has been fitted with the Marine Air Defense Integrated System, MATIS, designed to protect against low-cost, dangerous unmanned aerial vehicles. The MATIS system was mounted on an all-terrain vehicle and placed on the deck, with reports stating it has been in use since June 2018. The ship was armed with powerful sensors and advanced jamming technology, which allowed it to disable the Iranian drone when it ventured too close. This incident highlights the need for creative strategies in modern warfare. During World War II, in July 1942, Admiral Pound faced a dangerous situation. He ordered convoy PQ-17 to disperse because there was a looming threat from German U-boats. HMS Ayrshire took charge of 3 cargo ships, guiding them to the edge of the Arctic ice to hide from enemy eyes. One of these ships was carrying white paint, and all 3 had M4 Sherman tanks on their decks. In a stroke of genius, the crews decided to break open the cargo and cover their ships in white paint, blending them perfectly with the icy surroundings. They even figured out how to use the Sherman tank's 75mm cannons, turning the turrets towards the sea in case of an attack. Although they never had to fire the cannons, this inventive tactic demonstrated just how innovative their thinking was. In the same spirit, equipping current Navy ships with light armored vehicles is a smart way to tackle the unpredictable threats posed by Iranian boats. In 2002, the United States military conducted a large wargame exercise called Millennium Challenge 2002. According to a 2012 article in the Christian Science Monitor, the exercise was meant to simulate a situation where Iran tries to block the Strait of Hormuz. The ideas behind this exercise and its results sparked a lot of debates. The article noted that Iran's strategy surprisingly managed to outsmart the more technologically advanced U.S. forces. A 2008 article in International Security suggested that Iran could block or seriously disrupt traffic in the strait for about a month. any U.S. attempt to reopen the strait could potentially make the conflict worse. However, a later article in the same journal questioned these ideas, arguing that the U.S. could reopen the strait much faster than first thought. Jumping ahead to December 2011, Iran's Navy started a 10-day exercise in international waters near the Strait of Hormuz. Rear Admiral Habibullah Sayari assured that Iran wouldn't close the strait during these drills, even though they could do so. He emphasized that such an important decision would need to be made at a higher political level. A May 2012 article by Nilüfer Oral, a Turkish maritime law researcher, concluded that Iran's threat to block the strait would break international laws like the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and the 1958 Convention on the High Seas. The article explained that a coastal state like Iran can only block passage through the strait if there's a direct threat or use of force against its authority, or if international law is broken during the passage. By 2013, 63 states had agreed to the treaty, including most NATO and Soviet bloc countries, but notably not most OPEC and Arab League nations like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, as well as China, North Korea, and South Korea. In June 2012, Saudi Arabia took a strategic step by reopening the Iraq pipeline through Saudi Arabia, IPSA. Originally taken from Iraq in 2001, this pipeline crosses Saudi Arabia and reaches a port on the Red Sea, with a capacity of 1.65 million barrels per day. In July 2012, the UAE started using a new oil pipeline from the Habshan fields in Abu Dhabi to the Fujairah oil terminal on the Gulf of Oman, effectively avoiding the Strait of Hormuz. This pipeline can handle about 2 million barrels per day, which is more than 3/4 of the UAE's oil production in 2012. To further boost Fujairah's status as a global oil hub, the UAE is also building the world's largest crude oil storage facility, capable of holding 14 million barrels. This pipeline route not only strengthens the UAE's energy security, but also cuts down on transportation costs and reduces the need for oil tankers to enter the Persian Gulf, lowering insurance costs. In a July 2012 article for Foreign Policy, Gal Luft compared Iran and the Strait of Hormuz to the Ottoman Empire's control over the Dardanelles during World War I, a key point for Russian grain shipments. Luft suggested that the ongoing tensions around the Strait of Hormuz are leading countries that rely on Persian Gulf oil to look for other shipping routes. He noted that Saudi Arabia was considering new pipelines to Oman and Yemen, while Iraq might reopen the old Iraq-Syria pipeline to transport oil to the Mediterranean. According to Luft, reducing dependence on the Strait of Hormuz gives the West a new chance to strengthen its strategy for containing Iran. What do you think about the surprising attack by an Iranian vessel on a heavily armored U.S. warship? Let us know your opinion in the comments section.